The question every senior is asking right now. Right now, across the country, millions of older Americans are quietly asking the same question. Is the talked about $2,000 payment really coming, or is it about to disappear because of a Supreme Court decision? This question matters deeply to seniors, especially those living on fixed incomes who depend on stability, not surprises. And yet the headlines have been anything but calm. Some say the money is guaranteed. Others claim it's already dead. The truth, as usual, sits somewhere in the middle. In times like this, confusion spreads faster than facts. Legal language, political debate, and financial speculation often collide, leaving retirees feeling uneasy and unsure about what to believe. That uncertainty can be stressful, especially when it feels like decisions made far away in Washington could directly affect your monthly budget. The goal here is not to fuel fear or false hope, but to slow everything down and look carefully at what is actually confirmed, what remains uncertain, and what seniors should realistically expect right now. At the center of this conversation is a possible $2,000 payment that has been described by the president as a dividend, not traditional stimulus. The funding idea is closely tied to revenue collected from tariffs on imported goods. At the same time, the Supreme Court is reviewing the legality of certain emergency tariffs, and that review has created a wave of speculation. As of today, no final ruling has been issued, nothing has been canceled, nothing has been approved. We are still waiting. Understanding that simple fact is the first step toward peace of mind. When you separate confirmed information from noise, fear begins to lose its grip. And that's exactly what we'll continue to do, step by step, in the next part. Why the Supreme Court is suddenly part of this story. To understand why the Supreme Court has become such a central part of the $2,000 payment discussion, we need to slow down and look at what is actually happening behind the scenes. This is not about a stimulus check being approved or denied overnight. Instead, it's about a legal review that could influence how the government collects revenue in the future. The Supreme Court is currently reviewing the legality of certain emergency tariffs that were put in place on imported goods. These tariffs were designed to generate significant revenue for the federal government. Over time, that revenue has grown into hundreds of billions of dollars, with long-term projections reaching into the trillions. This is the same pool of money the administration has pointed to when discussing the possibility of a $2,000 dividend-style payment to Americans. It's important to understand what the court has not done. The Supreme Court has not issued a final ruling. It has not struck down the tariffs. It has not ordered refunds, and it has not blocked any future payments. We are still in what experts call the review phase. That waiting period is exactly where confusion and misinformation tend to thrive. For retirees, this distinction matters. A review does not equal a rejection. Legal processes move slowly by design, and major financial policies are rarely decided with a single ruling. Until an official decision is announced, nothing changes on the ground. The tariffs remain in place, and discussions about future payments remain just that, discussions. In the next part, we'll take a closer look at what tariffs really are, how they generate revenue, and why that revenue alone does not automatically mean a $2,000 check is approved or guaranteed. What tariffs really mean and where the money comes from. Before anyone can understand whether a $2,000 payment is realistic, it's important to clearly understand what tariffs are and how they actually work. The word itself often sounds technical or distant, but the concept is fairly simple. Tariffs are fees placed on goods that are imported into the United States from other countries. Those fees are collected by the federal government and deposited directly into the U.S. Treasury. Over time, these fees can add up to enormous sums of money. According to government statements, tariff revenues have already reached into the hundreds of billions of dollars. Supporters of the proposed $2,000 payment often point to these figures as proof that the money exists. And in a narrow sense, that's true. Revenue is being collected. The government does have additional funds flowing in from these import fees. However, this is where many headlines leave out critical context. Just because money is collected does not automatically mean it has been approved for a specific purpose. Government revenue and government spending are two very different things. For any payment to be sent out, there must be clear legal authority, political agreement, and logistical planning. None of that happens automatically. This distinction is especially important for seniors. Hearing that the money is there can create a sense of certainty that simply doesn't exist yet. Revenue can be redirected, delayed, or used for other priorities. Until Congress and the administration formally approve a payment, tariff income remains general revenue, not a guaranteed source for individual checks. In the next part, we'll address a major concern many retirees have right now, the fear that if tariffs are ruled unlawful, the $2,000 payment disappears entirely. That fear sounds logical, but the reality is more complex. What happens if the court rules against the tariffs? One of the biggest fears circulating right now among retirees is this idea that everything hinges on the Supreme Court decision. The concern sounds simple and logical on the surface. If the court rules against the tariffs, then the revenue disappears, and with it, the possibility of a $2,000 payment. But government finance rarely works in such a straight line. Even if the Supreme Court were to rule that the current form of emergency tariffs is not lawful, that decision would not automatically erase the government's ability to collect revenue. What it would do is block that specific mechanism in its current form. History shows that when one revenue tool is restricted, governments often pivot to another. Duties can be restructured, fees can be renamed, new legal pathways can be introduced. This is why many policy experts say a negative ruling would likely cause delays and adjustments, not an instant cancellation. There would almost certainly be a transition period while lawmakers and agencies respond. During that time, headlines may declare the payment dead, even though the underlying discussions continue quietly behind the scenes. For seniors, this distinction is critical. A court ruling can slow a process, complicate it, or force changes, but it does not automatically decide the final outcome. Long-term policy is rarely settled in a single moment. It unfolds over months, sometimes years, through legal revisions and political negotiation. In the next part, we'll look closely at the timing issue. Why, even if a payment is possible in theory, sending it out quickly is far more complicated than most people realize. Why timing matters more than headlines. When people hear about a possible $2,000 payment, the natural follow-up question is, when? And this is where expectations often collide with reality. Even if funding exists in theory, timing plays a crucial role in whether a payment can actually be delivered and how quickly. Sending out a nationwide payment of this size is a massive logistical operation. It requires legal authorization, administrative coordination, and clear rules about eligibility. None of that happens overnight. Even programs that are already well established, like Social Security adjustments, take months of planning before changes show up in people's accounts. This is why analysts caution against assuming that any legal or political development would immediately trigger a check in the mail. Government systems move deliberately, not instantly. If the Supreme Court ruling results in changes to revenue collection, those changes would need to be addressed before any payment plan could move forward. That alone introduces delays. For retirees, understanding this timeline helps reduce stress. A headline may suggest urgency, but urgency in the news does not translate into urgency in policy execution. There is often a long gap between announcements and action. In the next part, we'll look at the real cost of a $2,000 payment and why affordability is one of the biggest hurdles standing between discussion and delivery. The true cost behind a $2,000 payment. When discussions turn to whether a $2,000 payment is possible, the most important factor is cost. This is where emotions must step aside and numbers take the lead. Sending $2,000 to a large portion of the population is not a small or symbolic action. It represents one of the largest single cash distributions the government could attempt. Estimates suggest that depending on how many people qualify, the total cost of such a payment could range from roughly $300 billion to more than $600 billion. To put that into perspective, that amount rivals or exceeds the annual budgets of many major federal programs. Even for a government with significant resources, that kind of expense requires careful planning and justification. This is why analysts point out that tariff revenue collected so far would not be enough to cover a one-time payment made all at once. The math simply doesn't work in the short term. However, when the timeline is extended, the picture changes. Over a 10-year period, tariffs and related fees could generate several trillion dollars in revenue, making a $2,000 payment appear more manageable as a long-term distribution rather than an immediate payout. For seniors, this distinction is important. A payment might be financially possible over time, but difficult to execute quickly. In the next part, we'll explore why affordability alone does not guarantee approval and what other hurdles still stand in the way. Why affordability does not mean approval. It's easy to assume that if the numbers technically work, then a $2,000 payment must be inevitable. But in government policy, affordability and approval are two very different things. Even when funding sources appear viable, multiple layers of decision-making still stand between an idea and an actual payment. For any distribution of this size, Congress would likely need to be involved, rules would need to be written, and agencies would need clear instructions. Budgets must be negotiated, priorities must be balanced, and every step opens the door to debate, delay, and compromise. None of that moves quickly, especially in a politically divided environment. This is where many proposals stall. A plan may make sense on paper, but competing interests can shift focus elsewhere. Other programs may take priority. Economic conditions may change. What felt urgent one month can quietly fade the next. For retirees, this reality reinforces an important principle. Until a payment is officially approved and scheduled, it should not be considered part of your financial plan. Hope can be helpful, but reliance can be risky. In the next part, we'll address another major unknown: who would actually qualify if a payment were approved. The big unknown: who would actually qualify? One of the most important questions seniors are asking right now is also the hardest to answer. If a $2,000 payment were approved, who would actually receive it? At this stage, the honest answer is that no one knows for sure. And that uncertainty matters, especially for retirees living on fixed incomes. So far, there are no finalized eligibility rules. No official income limits have been announced. There has been no confirmation that Social Security recipients would automatically qualify. The only public hints have come from general comments suggesting that individuals earning under $100,000 might be considered. But even those remarks were not firm commitments. This lack of clarity creates a dangerous space for assumptions. A single retiree with modest income might qualify. A married couple with combined income could fall outside the threshold. Certain benefits might be counted toward income, or they might be excluded entirely. Until the rules are clearly written, every claim about eligibility remains speculation. For seniors, the safest approach right now is caution. Do not assume qualification. Do not make financial decisions based on eligibility that hasn't been confirmed. In the next part, the hidden risk of counting on unapproved money. One of the quiet dangers in situations like this is not the policy itself, but how people react to it emotionally. When headlines repeatedly mention a possible $2,000 payment, it's natural to start mentally counting on that money. Many retirees don't even realize they're doing it, but this habit can quietly create financial risk. Relying on unapproved money can lead to small decisions that add up over time. A bill gets delayed, a purchase feels easier to justify, a financial cushion slowly shrinks. None of these choices feel dramatic on their own, but together they can increase stress, especially if the payment never arrives or arrives much later than expected. This is why experienced financial planners consistently give the same advice. Until a payment is officially approved and scheduled, it should not be included in your budget. Your retirement plan should be built on what you already have, not on what might happen. For seniors, this approach protects both finances and peace of mind. If the payment eventually comes, it feels like a bonus. If it doesn't, nothing in your daily life is disrupted. In the next part, we'll discuss another serious issue that often appears during times like this: scams and misinformation targeting older Americans. The rise of scams. When money hits the headlines. Whenever stories about stimulus checks or government payments begin circulating, another problem tends to rise alongside them: scams. Unfortunately, scammers pay very close attention to the news, and they know exactly when seniors are being told to expect money. During times like this, you may receive phone calls, emails, text messages, or even social media messages claiming they can help you secure your $2,000 payment. Some may say there's a form you must complete. Others may warn that your payment will be delayed unless you verify personal information. These messages are designed to create urgency and fear. It's important to remember this simple rule: no legitimate government agency will ever call, text, or email you asking for your Social Security number, bank details, or payment in order to release a stimulus check. Any message that asks for that information is a red flag. For retirees, protecting what you already have is just as important as any potential future payment. If something feels off, pause, step back, talk to a trusted family member or financial advisor before responding. In the next part, we'll focus on what seniors should be doing instead of reacting to headlines during this waiting period. What seniors should do while everything remains uncertain. When the future feels unclear, knowing what not to do is just as important as knowing what to do. Right now, the smartest move for seniors is to resist the urge to react to every new headline. Financial stability in retirement is built on consistency, not quick responses to breaking news. First and foremost, continue managing your finances as if the $2,000 payment may never arrive. Pay your bills on time. Stick to your budget. Avoid postponing important decisions based on money that hasn't been approved. This approach may sound cautious, but it's actually empowering. It keeps you in control no matter how the situation unfolds. Second, stay informed, but be selective. Official information comes from sources like the U.S. Treasury, Congress, or established government agencies. Social media posts and dramatic commentary are often designed to attract attention, not provide clarity. Finally, take this time to review your financial basics. Make sure you're receiving all benefits you already qualify for. Confirm your Social Security information is up to date. Small steps like these strengthen your financial foundation regardless of future payments. In the next part, we'll talk about emotional well-being, why staying grounded matters just as much as staying informed. Why emotional stability matters more than predictions. One of the most overlooked parts of financial well-being in retirement is emotional stability. Constant exposure to dramatic headlines can quietly wear people down, especially when the news involves money. One day a payment feels guaranteed, the next day it feels impossible. This emotional back and forth creates unnecessary stress. For seniors, peace of mind is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Emotional fatigue can lead to rushed decisions, anxiety, and even health concerns. That's why it's so important to recognize when information consumption becomes overwhelming. Staying grounded doesn't mean ignoring the news. It means choosing how much attention you give it. Setting boundaries around when and how you check updates can make a significant difference. Focus instead on what you can control, your routine, your spending habits, and your long-term plan. In times of uncertainty, calm decision-making almost always outperforms emotional reactions. In the next part, we'll bring everything together and look at where things truly stand right now. Where things truly stand right now. After separating speculation from facts, it's important to pause and clearly state where things actually stand today. As of now, the Supreme Court has not issued a final ruling. The tariffs in question have not been officially struck down, and no $2,000 payment has been approved, funded, or scheduled. That means anyone speaking with absolute certainty, either promising money or declaring it dead, is doing so without full information. Confidence is not the same as certainty. And for retirees, understanding that difference can prevent a lot of unnecessary worry. What we do know is that discussions are ongoing. The administration continues to reference the idea of a dividend-style payment. Policymakers are aware of the public interest, and there is recognition that alternative revenue tools may exist even if current tariffs are modified. At the same time, there are real obstacles. Legal challenges, political negotiations, budget priorities, and logistical hurdles all stand in the way. Holding both truths at once, that the idea is not off the table but far from guaranteed, is the most honest position right now. In the next part, we'll reflect on what really matters most for retirees as this situation continues to unfold. What really matters for your retirement security. At this stage, it's helpful to step back and remember what truly protects your financial future. Retirement security is not built on one-time payments or headline-driven promises. It's built on steady planning, realistic expectations, and calm decision-making over time. Whether a $2,000 payment happens next year, later on, or not at all, your day-to-day financial well-being should remain grounded in what you can control. Your Social Security benefits, your savings, your spending habits, and your long-term plan matter far more than any single policy discussion. This perspective doesn't mean ignoring potential help. It simply means not allowing uncertainty to disrupt stability. Many seniors have successfully navigated decades of economic change by focusing on fundamentals rather than predictions. That same approach still applies today. In the final part, we'll close with a calm reflection on how to stay confident and grounded no matter how this situation ultimately unfolds. A calm way forward, no matter the outcome. As we bring this discussion to a close, it's important to return to a place of clarity and calm. Right now, no one can say with certainty how the Supreme Court will rule, how revenue policies may change, or whether a $2,000 payment will ultimately be approved, and that uncertainty, while uncomfortable, is not something you need to fear. What matters most is how you respond to uncertainty. Over a lifetime, you've likely experienced recessions, policy changes, and financial surprises, some good, some difficult. The reason many retirees remain stable today is not because every prediction came true, but because they built resilience into their plans. If a payment eventually arrives, it should feel like welcome relief, not something your financial security depends on. And if it never comes, your stability should remain intact. That balance, hope without dependence, is one of the most valuable financial skills in retirement. Stay informed through official sources, protect yourself from scams, keep your budget grounded in reality, and most importantly, trust the steady habits that have carried you this far. Headlines will come and go, but calm, thoughtful planning continues to serve you well. Thank you for taking the time to walk through this information carefully. If this discussion helped you feel more informed or more at ease, then it has done its job. And remember, confidence in retirement doesn't come from knowing every future outcome. It comes from knowing you're prepared no matter what happens next.